Hello, one and all, and welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your media and tech-related production questions every single day. Cindy Drozda from Erie, Colorado is our reader today. Cindy, what have we got? Oops, I'm not hearing you, Cindy.
Oops. Our first question today is from Jack Cannon in Phoenix, Arizona, USA. I need to record either a solo bagpiper or 3 to 5 bagpipers playing for our documentary. Our thoughts are to record in a church sanctuary and then in a cemetery and use the church audio for the cemetery scenes. How would you mic a bagpipe setup?
And most of the musicians I know, they would say, I'm sorry you have to do that. But actually, that's an interesting question. Courtney, what do you have?
Very carefully. The problem with the bagpipe, and it depends on a couple of things. Are the bagpipers moving? Are they coming down an aisle and turning around and changing position? If they're not moving, if they're in a static place, I would like to capture the acoustics of the church, because bagpipe is pretty loud and can be heard, miles away through the fog, as it's been proved time and time again in movies. But I would mic them with a 416 in front, maybe about 4 or 5 feet away from them, because the sound comes out of a bagpipe in 2 different directions. The drones are the pipes that go out the back, and they're kind of pointing backward, and the chantar, which is the little thing that they use their fingers to play the different notes on, comes out the front of the horn on the front of the chantar. So directional mics, you kind of want to get farther away and get how that sound bounces off the environment. And I would probably like to use the sound in the church with the echo of the church. Would be a much more ethereal sound. So I would mic it with a single mic for the chantar and what's bouncing off the drones in the room. And then maybe a second mic a little further back to pick up the echo and the ambience of the hall that they're in, or the church sanctuary that they're in, so that then you could mix it in post and make it a little drier to mix with the outside sound, and then bring in the ambience of the church on the inside sound. So you can make it sound a little bit different between the inside and the outside, but use the same track.
Alex.
Mickey said that for the church, he would use 2 to 3 U87s covering left, right, or left, center, right, plus 2 or 3 stereo pairs of MKH40s at various distances getting the room. For the cemetery, each mic would be a DPA 4099. The one thing I would say is I would test the church to see how it works. With a lot of churches, the reverberation may be very high and complex and may not sound great if you're going to actually sell it as a cemetery. So that would be the only thing I would just test it. Just try to get a bagpiper in it if you can. You may be right, Jack, that the cemetery audio may not be very good. So the church could make sense. The one that I think that most people think of when they think of bagpipes, at least in the United States, is probably the night scene in Braveheart. So you want to listen to that one, because that's like the quintessential for an American. That's a quintessential bagpipe, sound. And so there's just a little bit of reverb to it. And so you might want to think about, I think you could probably record it in a variety of different environments. I don't know if a church would be the one that I would choose, depending on the church. If it's a cathedral, you just may end up with some really long waves. But if it's a different kind of church or whatever, or a large room, you might get just the right reverb for what you're doing.
And Alexander Knight.
Yeah, so there's so many mic choices here. Obviously, like Mickey was saying, U87s are great if you got them. They're super expensive. There's a lot of options. I don't know what the budget is, but here's just one example here. I really like these SE Electronics T2s. Now, you'll notice by the design, they kind of look like a C414, but they're this particular mic, they have 2 versions of this. There's the 4400 and the T2. They both look like a C414, but they have different capsules. The T2 has an aluminum capsule, and the nice thing about that is because of the low mass, it is able to move very, very quickly, and it's able to capture transients incredibly well. It gives you all the same polar patterns that a C414 would give you, so cardioid, hypercardioid, omni, and figure 8 as well. And they sound fantastic on all sorts of sources, everything from really harsh annoying, cymbals to guitars or even vocals, and they're priced incredibly well. And if you buy them as a stereo pair, they're under $2,000, and you get this nice little stereo mounting bar with them. So that is just one option, and because of the flexibility that it gives you with the various polar patterns, you can really play around with how tight do you want that polar pattern. If you are recording in a church, like what Alex said, they all will sound different acoustically, so we don't know what that place sounds like. I often end up fighting really, really long decay times in a lot of churches, and it can be incredibly annoying. So you may have to experiment a little bit with your mic choices there.
Hopefully, Jack, that gave you some suggestions, and we wish you well in your recording situation. Next question.
Our next one comes from Hazma Gajar in Cape Town. Forced to manage hybrid medical event. Need a cordless handheld mic so in-person attendees can be heard by online folks. Not a buy once, cry once option, but neither from a dollar store. Suggestions?
Alex Lindsay has some for you. Alex?
Rent. If you don't have the money to buy a good wireless mic, rent one. So there's, I think in Cape Town or Johannesburg, you're going to definitely find rental houses that will do it. But Mickey says that Sennheiser EW300G4 with a 935 capsule. It's a great thing about this is it can be interoperable with your existing G3 and G4 systems. Just get systems in the same frequency block and make sure that you get remote antennas for the receivers as well. So that might be another option there. But be careful of buying wireless stuff that you can't afford the best stuff. But the Sennheiser could be a good solution. I have a tendency to not like to get all-in-one mics, so I have a tendency to get mic plugs, just because then it gives me more flexibility. And I have a tendency to use in this case, and Mickey I think would probably suggest other things, but I have a tendency to use SM58s for this with a mic plug. I like those because I can change out what I'm doing. I've had a variety of issues with regular ones. I mean, the ones that we use for almost anything like this is Axient. Like that's what I rent an Axient for almost every wireless system that I use in any kind of large environment, just because I want it to work. But you may not be able, that might not work inside of the budget.
Next question.
This one comes to us through the QR code from Jeremy Abreu in Massachusetts. Looking for suggestions for a rig for my Sony A6700, which will be used on swimming broadcasts on deck for a manned roving camera and also swimmer interviews. Can the crew suggest what should be on rig, light, shoulder mount, etc.? Thank you.
Alex is going to help you out. Alex?
It depends. It depends on what you're shooting. The first thing that I would recommend is getting a cage for your camera. Now, I don't know who all makes the cages. I know that you'll probably get a cage from, Small Rig has a cage. Tilta will have a cage. Look at all the things and all the prices that you see there to decide what it is. But the first thing I do with a camera is I put it in a cage, because now you have a bunch of mounting points. And when I say a cage, I mean like this is brought yours up, and here's an example of the Small Rig. So this is going to protect the camera a little bit, but most importantly, you now have all of these mounting points that are around it, and it just makes a huge difference when you're trying to do production to not have just the quarter inch in the hot shoe, or the cold shoe there. So get a cage for it. A lot of times, if you're doing a walk around, you may want to think about a shoulder rig. So that and you can get shoulder rigs from, again, and the thing is, I usually stay in one style. So if you buy Tilta, you're going to buy a whole bunch of Tilta stuff. You're going to buy a small rig. You're going to buy a bunch of small rig stuff. I tend not to mix and match, because the distances between the taps oftentimes are bigger. Are different. So you have to be kind of careful of mixing and matching some of these things. So I would you can get a shoulder rig, you get some rails. Now you can start to, if you want to put on focus controls and anything else that's handheld. I mean, it depends on how far you want to go and what your budget is, but being able to have, on the handles, being able to have thumb control of zoom and most importantly, focus, super useful. Like it really, really helps when you're doing handheld to have those kind of controls available to you when there. Now, Mickey says that the small rig avoid small rig whenever it's possible. very poor build quality. And I can say, as someone who has about $3,000 worth of small rig gear, it's fine. I don't like the smaller arms are problematic, but everything else has worked pretty well for me. And I've pushed some of them pretty hard. I don't know if I would go back that way again, but I think that it's not bad for the price. Mickey suggests a cage, shoulder mount, handles, all stuff. I guess I said a rod rig from the likes of Shape or Wooden Camera, and again, those are great if you can afford them. Dummy battery with for the camera, Zacuto, Kfinity EFF, a multi-dyne silverback for an uplink truck, return video, tally and comms. I mean, yes, this is what if you have the budget, this is the thing that you want to get. Mickey also said for lighting, people fly around with Aladdin Flex and Mosaic fabric lights, either on stands or handheld if possible. If not, the light panel brick or Lycos on the camera. So I think that and again, are you doing the swimmer interviews inside or outside? If you're in an outside pool, you're probably going to get a lot of light, and what you're really thinking about is most likely bounce or diffusion to do that. So it's just a matter. But I will say that the shoulder rig, some rails, handheld, it will really make a big difference. It just adds a lot of weight, and it doesn't feel so small. And you're now based on your shoulder there, so that's going to make a big difference. I mean, if you want to splurge, you can also look at things like the Ronin solutions, and so now you can throw that camera on a stabilizer, and just to kind of give you some of the options depending on what you're doing. For us, a lot of times a Ronin, on what's called an easy rig is something that the guys can use because they can roam around and they don't get tired. Some people can go a very long time with that. You will want to think about external batteries or the ability. Make sure when you build up your rig, you can get to the battery, or it depends. If you're not going live, you have the time to pull a battery out and put it back in. Most of us will switch to some kind of box battery that's going to give us a D-tap, and then it's going to go either into the side of the camera or into a dummy battery, as Mickey said. So those are some things to think about.
Hopefully that helped, Jeremy. Next question.
Here's a QR code question from Michael in Richmond. Building off my analog way question, if you go pure software switching, what devices and cards do you recommend? How much could I do with M4 Mac Minis with Millumin?
Alexander Knight's going to start us off here.
Well, thankfully, these days, the world of software, you have a lot of choice and flexibility. I mean, you have VisVector, you've got Ecamm, you got vMix, you got MimoLive. MimoLive's exclusive to Mac OS. So just keep that in mind. Some of the other platforms are some of the other apps are cross-platform or only compatible on either Windows or Mac OS. So you need to decide what platform you want to be on. Of course, like for me, I love MimoLive. I think it's incredibly powerful. You have to get out of the mindset of a typical standard preview program cut bus. If you come from the world of hardware switching, it took me a while to adjust because it's closer conceptually to Photoshop if you think in terms of layers and composition. Once you get past that, though, it's incredible. For hardware, of course, if you need to get signals into the computer other than NDI or other means, you can always if you get an M4 Mac Mini, you can get a Sonnet enclosure, which basically is a little PCI box that allows you to plug in full-size PCI cards. You can get capture cards from Blackmagic, like the Decklinks, or get another capture card from Magewell or some other company like maybe Aja if you're going SDI or HDMI, depending on what your workflow is for all of that, and that's how you would get it into the computer. These days, I find for what I do, just a base model M4 Mac Mini with 16 gigs of RAM, just the base chip, not even the Pro chip. I have at least anywhere from 5 to 8 Zoom ISO sources. I've tested up to 8 ISO Zoom sources going in at 1080p and then streaming to 4K, so everything's getting upscaled with ISO records. I don't see more than about 50% utilization on the processor, so that gives you some sense of just how incredibly powerful these M4 Mac Minis are.
Alex?
Yeah, and Millumin has some recommendations on their site for how many monitors. So the question is, how many monitors can you drive? So that's the thing to kind of also look at. I think that they're talking about an M2 Ultra, their data might be a little bit older, so maybe there's some newer ones, but an M2 Ultra, Mac Studio or Mac Pro can run 8 displays based on that. So you have to kind of think about how many displays you actually need to map for making that work.
Don't forget, we're always taking your questions. That's how we run the show. If we want to ask questions, chat about the questions, or vote on the questions, you need to be in our Mikana system. That's easy to get to. You go to officehours.global/join. We send you an email, and within a day or two, once you've registered, you can ask, vote on, and discuss the questions, and that way you affect how the show runs. That's officehours.global/join. Next question.
Bunsak Dorji asks the panel, "Hi, I'm planning to live stream a chess tournament. I have 3 cameras, and I want to have the digital display showing the moves on a projector. Please advise. Thanks."
This is an interesting question. Courtney, dive in.
Well, Funsak, I would set up your projection screen between the two chess players, have them facing each other on the stage, with, of course, the chessboard between them, and the display that has your digital display. And you can use any digital chess program where you can enter the moves separately, and they will be displayed in an overhead view of the board. So it's a top-down view of the board in the digital display on the screen between the two of them. And then use your 3 cameras to get a wide two-shot that includes both players facing each other and the screen in the middle. So you can see the positions on the screen, and you can see the 2 players as they contemplate the moves of the other player, and then use your other 2 cameras on either side, just out of frame of each other in an XY kind of situation where one's shooting a close-up of the face of one player and the other shooting close-up of the face of the opposite player, so that you can get all of those pensive moves and reaction shots of the opposing player when one player makes a startling move. And then you can cut back to the wide shot. You could cut directly to the digital signal that's going to the screen, but you may not have to, as long as the pieces are clearly visible in the wide shot that shows the big downward digital display of the board behind them, so that the people following along can see the state of the board at any time. That would be good. That would be how I would do it.
Yeah, the thing I would be thinking about going into this is lighting for people, because you've got a really tight scene. And I would be thinking in terms of the camera positions that are shooting the players, particularly their faces, what's behind them and how much distraction am I going to get? Chess is a very cerebral game, and so you really want to be able to see how people are thinking about things. And there have been great chess movies in the last few years, so I'd probably take a look at one of them and just think about how they lit things, because you don't have a lot of room for beaming light into a face when you have an overhead that's lighting up the entire board, and that's going to be spilling on their faces a lot. So it's just an interesting challenge. Alice, you had some thoughts.
David Brady said, have your commentator follow the moves on clono.no.
I wonder what Clono is. I've never heard of that, but there you go. Some other resource material to take a look at before you do this. Thank you for the question, Funsak. Let's go to our next question.
From the QR code, Jerry Hoyle in Wesley Chapel, North Carolina asks, if successfully upheld, what effect would 100% tariff on movie production outside the U.S. have on the industry?
Courtney's worked in the film industry in Hollywood for a long time. Courtney, what are your thoughts?
Well, what are you going to put the tariff on? That's the question. And with Hollywood's creative accounting, it probably wouldn't matter at all, because no movie is ever going to show a profit. So, hey, a percentage of the profits, hey, forget it. It's a back-end deal. Still make the movies elsewhere. It could force a lot of production to be distributed in other markets rather than the United States, because U.S. isn't the only market for movies and television. There's a huge big world out there that, and these days with translation software and automatic subtitle generation, you can pretty much serve any language-speaking country with entertainment. And there's a great thirst for American actors in foreign countries. So, it might just increase foreign distribution quite a bit and kind of curtail distribution in the United States, or make it only available on streaming, which would be very hard to, collect that tariff on streams coming out of Europe. So I'm not sure how it could even be handled with 100% tariff on films being made outside and brought back in. It would depend on how the tariffs are written.
Nigel?
Yeah, so I think with all the tariffs that have been discussed, two things always become clear. One, the headline is never the whole story. So I think we'd need to really know, as Courtney describes, what do you mean by that? What are the definitions here? And when it goes from an EO into a law or into a tax or something, how would that be managed? And without that, it's hard to really know the long-term implication. I think the short-term implication, particularly if I look at the response in the UK market, which is obviously a huge production machine for worldwide movies, is it will throw just more uncertainty into the film industry. Uncertainty that will be doubled down on top of AI, on top of remaining issues from the writers and actors strike. And I think it will accelerate the decline of the movie industry as we probably knew it 20 years ago. Where it ends up, I'm not sure I'm smart enough to know, but I think it will drive, the uncertainty will drive more production into Netflix, into Prime, into Apple, and places where there may be more certainty of the ROI.
Good thoughts all the way around. Don't forget, tonight, Monday, Extra Hours happens. That's at 6 p.m. Pacific time. It's one of the many shows we have going on. That's happening tonight with Grant Whitehead. Tuesday, we're going to have a show on Final Cut and some other things, and I and CJ and others are going to perhaps be involved in that. Thursday, The Rundown happens with David Paskin, a fun show that I've been on a few times, and I really enjoy David's approach to how this gets produced. We're just expanding into more areas so that you have something to do in the evening time in the U.S., and that also maps to better times sometimes for our global audience, so we appreciate your support for all of those. Next question.
Hazma Kajar in Cape Town is seriously considering Blackmagic ATEM 2ME. It has 2 multi-view outputs. If I need a third, can one of the video outs be inserted into one of the 20 ins and then pushed through one of the outs going to a screen?
Courtney, we've got an Ouroboros question here. Can you get it out and in
I
now?
wouldn't do it that way. I would just get a distribution amplifier or a splitter and put it on the multi-view out that you need to duplicate. As long as you're not needing a separate multi-view with different arrangement on it of inputs. Because tying up an input to get an output doesn't make much sense on that. You have like through outputs, you have individual outputs for each input. And I guess the routing is now selectable. Usually there's a mix minus that goes to the output, for example, camera input 1 or camera input 2 and the SDI inputs. You could use one of the outputs. If you don't need that input, it might add additional delay and may generate some synchronizing problems. I think just a regular DA, or if you've got a hub that you're using to do routing with, just route your multi-view into the hub, and then you can assign it to any number of monitors coming out. Alex, your thoughts?
I'm not 100% sure that you can't just define another output. I'm just trying to picture the newer ATEM 2MEs. The reason that you can loop through is because it's got so much IO. It probably has way more inputs than you need and more outputs than you need. So you could theoretically loop it. I'm usually Mickey said no. You just have to set multi-view outputs on the set. You just have the set of multi-view outputs on the ATEM. So I don't know. I'm usually very resistant to looping, not because I'm losing an input and an output, just because you can create a feedback loop pretty easily where you don't expect it. So looping an output from a switcher back into the switcher is something I would generally try to avoid. I think that a simple, having a simple HXMD would solve this problem. It goes in, you will get a little bit of delay, as Courtney said, but it would just work, and then you'd have 1 in, 4 outs, and you're off to the races. And so something like that would probably work.
Hopefully that took care of things, and good luck with the presentation, Hazwick. Next question.
This one is for me, Cindy Drozda in Erie, Colorado. What gear failures have you experienced right before showtime, and what did you do to solve them?
Oh, this could go for a while because we've all had them. Alexander Knight, you're going to start us off.
I've never had a systems failure ever. No, I'm just kidding. In fact, I've had a couple of weird ones lately. One was, and I'm going to blame Core Audio here, but my entire setup relies on Dante audio. And so, for those that don't know, Dante is basically a multi-channel audio protocol that operates over your network. So just digital bits, ones and zeros. And on the main machine, about half an hour before show start, the Mac that was running Dante Virtual Sound Card just decided that it didn't want to recognize any of my Dante patching. It wouldn't pass audio. And I solved it, thankfully, after rebooting the computer. So it was weird. I tried restarting Dante Virtual Sound Card, didn't really solve it. So it was a bit weird. And then actually just yesterday, 5 minutes, literally 5 minutes, I'm looking at the countdown clock before the live stream goes out. This fill light on my left-hand side here started flickering crazy, like a strobe light. So I had to turn it off. And what I did was, to compensate for the loss of light, I've got a variable ND filter. So I just opened up the ND filter again, and I'm running on less lights now. So that's what you're seeing here. Get a little bit more shadow on this side, but what are you going to do? So you always got to find workarounds and still have a show.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, we were talking about before the show. I had a situation where we lost power overnight, and then this is for a broadcast truck, so a 42-foot double expando broadcast truck, and the folks who were managing the power just plugged it back in again, so it was kind of a hard start on a Harris router, and so everything was running, but they wanted to put another power cat in, because these are power. These are generators that are the size of a container, like the shipping container. They wanted to put another one in, and they had brought one in an hour. It's kind of that kind of show. And they loaded it in. They wanted to switch over and do a couple things. And so we carefully took the truck down and brought it back up again with the new one, because you can't say, oh, I don't want the power, after you just blew a head gasket and then lose power in the middle of the show. Like I said, well, if you can get it done, an hour and 45 minutes ahead of time, we can. They said it'll take 5 minutes. It's one of those things. And so they took it down and they brought it back up. And the Harris router has two controllers, and they copied from one to the other. So the corrupted controller copied to the good controller, and it was gone. And so now we don't have a router. So this is why you have patch panels. So they basically, using the patch panels and a variety of things. If I was fortunate that an incredible engineer at the truck and a person who really knows the Sony switchers and they were able to hard patch everything. We got the first camera up about 40 minutes before the show, and had all the cameras except for graphics up by the show started on time. But I will say that at the end of the show, we did have to do the red carpet with a phone. We had to run out and just shoot it so that we had something to play back, because we didn't have none of the triacs was working, because of this. And so anyway, so we got it all up, and I will say that I needed to stare at the wall for a little while afterwards. It was like one of those things, because everything was just like, it was just barely. And we were talking also about like how you manage jobs, and one of the things that's so important in these kind of situations is having a highly skilled crew. The people, a lot of times when I started, I just found people that could help me. Like they are going to help me do the thing that I need to do. They're extra hands for me is how I looked at it. But over time, you get people on most of my crews now, every person except for the PAs, sometimes the PAs, know more than me about their specific role. And so I'm talking to them about those things. And when you get into that situation and things go wrong, now you have a bunch of brains that are thinking about this that really know what they're doing. And that has saved us over and over and over again as a highly skilled crew with the proper amount of equipment, or more equipment than you need, and enough time to actually execute.
Courtney?
Well, there have been a couple of failures. I don't do that many live shows. There was one commercial that I was on. It was not a live show, so it was not as much panic. But we got to the stage. I was the computer wrangler, and it was a computer commercial. So we had several computers that had to appear on screen and appear working. And so we get there, set all up. I have a table set up to get the computers booted up and working. And the electricians ran me over a lunchbox to plug everything in. And the electrician, who apparently wasn't very well informed, had hooked up 220 volts. This was back in the days when power supplies on computers were just single voltage. They came set for single voltage. Had set it up for 220 volts coming out of the standard Edison Type 110 connectors. And so after plugging the second computer in and having it go poof and not work, I tested the voltage coming out, and it was at 220 rather than 110. So that meant that I had to change the power supplies out on both of those prototype computers before the shoot could go on. And so luckily we had backups of the computers in the shoot. We wouldn't have to cancel the shoot because the main primary prototype computers were blown up by an electrician who hooked up the power to the lunchbox incorrectly.
I'll do a couple real quick. The first one I've talked about before at office hours. It was an audio problem. I was in a room doing a professional speaker, and I put a brand new wireless microphone on him, a Sony good unit. I put fresh batteries in it. I always do a second tap off the audio board. That was my second thing. And just for the heck of it, I decided to put a tall stand in the back of the room with an EV635 way up at the top of the room speaker. Sure enough, he starts talking, and the batteries, I've never seen this happen before, failed on the wireless transmitter. So I popped to the board feed, and I still have audio. I'm going fine. Then I thought to myself, uh-oh. And so I plugged in that little mic stand, and sure enough, not more than 3 minutes after that, whoever was running the board killed my feed. So I had one mic up at the top speaker that saved the entire show for me. That was a lesson I'll never forget. The other one was not a equipment failure, but it shows you what can happen. I was shooting a professional group of physicians, and the woman who was doing the presentation on the stage came out, and she looked really lovely. Now, like most of us, she had a little extra weight on, so she had worn a black form-fitting dress that really was pretty. She had a bright red scarf at her neck, and she looked very nice. And I thought, oh, I looked at the stage, and there's this kind of beige Chinese screen behind him. I thought, that's going to look fabulous. We get ready. We're in the minute countdown to her appearance on stage, and two stagehands come out and take away that beige screen showing a black velvet curtain. So my video was a disembodied head with a bright scarlet underneath floating back and forth on the stage. The worst video I have ever shot in my life. You never can take care of everything in advance. Alex Lindsay, you had another thought?
Yeah, we had a bunch of people. James Haldane said years ago we were doing a live stream for SIGGRAPH, and our brand new camera started glitching after the stream started. We had a spare camera and tripod with us, and we were able to switch to it. And that's the kind of stuff. That's why you have extras. Daniel Partridge said last month catering destroyed our 50-foot cable going into the in-room Crestron system right before the meeting. Switched to SDI via converters. And David Brady said, I had a boardroom rear screen system Go Tango uniform. Had to deploy a front screen projector in 2 minutes. Yeah, those are the things that, again, when you're doing it, you got to have people who have muscle memory. I know we had one where we had a pretty high-level executive walking across campus, and when they left their office, they said they wanted a teleprompter. And we had a teleprompter for people talking, but we didn't have a teleprompter for text, and we didn't have an operator. And I had to, in the time he took to walk from one building to our building, I had to rewire the teleprompter to allow for a teleprompt software, download the teleprompt software, load his script in, and have it all ready to go that I could run it. And it worked, but there was definitely one of those moments. We joke a lot of times when you have to do that really fast. There's a scene in Armageddon where they're taking apart the nuke, or they're trying to turn the nuke off, and there's one guy in the corner going, "Do a good job, do a good job, do a good job." And we often say that when someone's moving fast, "Do a good job." so anyway.
Hopefully you enjoyed some of those. Everybody has these stories if you've been in this business for a long time, because it is live and it is variable. Next question.
Next up is panelist Alexander Knight in Port Coquitlam, BC, Canada. I have an Amaran F22x arriving on Tuesday. It looks quite large. I'm planning on replacing 3 Chauvet CastPanel lights, which are small, 12 inches by 12 inches. What do you think of the F22X? At 200 watts, I assume I'm only going to need a fraction of that power.
I was just taking a look at the light because I wasn't familiar with that one. Alex, have you had a chance to take a look at it?
Yeah, it looks great. It's hard to tell with 200 watts until you turn it on what you need. I think that you're using this as a fill. Is that right? Or a fill or a key?
I was actually I was hoping that I can just use just that light as like no other lights other than just this.
So you're going to go up the front?
Yeah, just like directly in front of that big box right in front of me there. Now I have a lens that is an Sigma 30mm f1.4, so it does take in a lot of light. So I will have to test it obviously with that light. And
it gives you the opportunity. I don't know what your ISO is on right now, but you'll be able to get to at least the native ISO relatively comfortably. Yeah. The other thing that you may end up doing if it's got a lot of power is to build a larger frame. So that's a 2x2 foot light. You may end up wanting to build a 4x4. I have a 3x5 light, and then you pull that one back 2 or 3 feet behind it and close it off and then run it. And you may find that that's a bigger and nicer and softer light. But you need the power on the back end to do that. So that power may be useful there.
Courtney?
Yeah, I just took a look at this light, and it's one of those rollable light. You can roll it up because it's got the discrete LEDs and bicolor on it. But the thing is that I don't like about these is because you have to put some diffusion in front of them to smooth it out. Because I don't like the ones that have the individual LEDs on a strip there, because you can get a lot of little micro shadows that show up, and can be they change the quality of the light. So I would run it through some diffusion first. So some tough frost or 216 or something in front of it that you could roll down in front of it, which would soften it up quite a bit. And I don't think you're probably going to be using that 200 watts. That may be the equivalent of a 200 watt soft light. You have to see whether that's the actual power consumption or whether that's the equivalent light output, of a 200 watt soft light.
Next question.
Brian Ewell in Kigali, Rwanda is asking, any recommendations for rechargeable AA nickel metal hydride batteries when your life depends on it? Brand and online site, as well as a recommendation, brand and online site, when failure is an option for training and thus very budget friendly.
Cindy, you want to expand?
Yes, I was going to say, I would not use nickel metal hydrides or nickel cadmium batteries because they are 1.2 volt cells, whereas these days you can get rechargeable alkalins that are 1.5 volt cells. And I am currently using, I know you can't see it on this camera, but 10 volts sells them. I get them on Amazon. They don't have the little mini micro USB thing to charge them. They charge in a fixture. And so far I've had good luck with them. But that's my recommendation, is go for the full voltage cells in your devices.
Alex?
Yeah, we've used Analoop. Have been some of the ones that we've used in the past. I will say that as a rechargeable, I will not use rechargeable batteries when I'm in a mission critical environment. I just don't trust them. I just don't trust to have them there. So I use pretty much any rechargeable that you want to use when I'm testing and training and doing other things. And I just want to keep working on things. But when it matters, I switch over to disposable batteries, because I just want them to only have been used once or never used before. And I want to be able to, and I'm going to burn through them. I know that that's not the least expensive way to do this. But I definitely agree using tons of the two things that I do when I'm testing and when I'm prepping and when I'm training is I have a bag of batteries that are all the old ones that weren't rechargeable that I just, because at the end of the day, I'm never going to use them again. And so they go into a vat of, I can use them for anything I want until they die. And then the other thing that I do is I use a lot of rechargeables for that. And I have some that just you put in a little box and it's got a USB-C and it just charges, And so, Mickey says that mission critical, disposable energizer, lithium blues, only use rechargeable for less critical uses. So we're on the same page there.
Courtney?
Yeah, I would use the, as was suggested for wireless mics, Non-rechargeable lithiums, like Mickey was suggesting, will give you a much longer battery life. The in-a-loops are good. You can get them just pretty much anywhere. They're made by Panasonic. Panasonic.
And I think that there's an Eneloop and an Eneloop Pro. You probably want
Yes.
Pro.
The higher, I was just going to suggest that. Look for the higher amp hour ratings on the Inaloops, because they come in two varieties of the Pro and the regular that have a higher discharge rate and a higher current delivery for the Pro version. So go for the ones that last longer.
Alexander?
Yeah, and I just posted this in the chat, but I might as well say it here. I find disagree. I find one-time use batteries. I'm not a fan of waste anymore, especially with high-quality rechargeables now. Now, if you're using wireless mics these days, if you're using a product like the Shure wireless systems, anything that's SLXD or higher, Shure sells these rechargeable lithium-ion battery sleds that go right into the mic. They also have the rechargeable docking stations, which you can get in various configurations, 2, 4, and 8, and they have a rack-mountable 1U version. They give you incredibly long battery life. In fact, you get much higher battery life with their lithium rechargeable batteries. Plus, they report battery health back to the system, so they give you other features as well. So there's no real reason in my mind to use just regular off-the-shelf disposable batteries if you're going to be doing gigs with wireless mics, very specifically with those. I just think there's so many good options with rechargeables now.
Alex, you wanted to come back?
Yeah, just the one note is we work on a lot of big corporate stuff, and we were asked for the environmental, what we're doing to reduce environmental impact, and my response generally looks like something like our impact on this event is here. People coming to your event is here. By live streaming it, we're impacting that. so the environmental impact of people showing up at your event is what is 10 times or 100 times what it is to stream it.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, I thought I would show something. If you're thinking about using alkaline batteries, here's an interesting chart that's on the Inaloop website. This shows you the Inaloop Pro, the Inaloop Lite, and an alkaline battery, so that you can see that a regular alkaline battery, like say for a digital camera, you get 200 shots out of an alkaline. Out of the Inaloop Pro nickel metal hydride, you get 1,200 shots. So 6 times the amount of life out of that rechargeable nickel metal hydride. So if you're thinking about going with alkaline disposables instead of the rechargeable, even though we're at a lower voltage, 1.2 volts, a lot of cameras and things have a little switch. Wireless mics have a little setting in the software to tell them whether you're using 1.5 volt or 1.25 volt rechargeables that change the metering on the battery, so that it tells you how much is left on the battery correctly. So you can still monitor your batteries, but make sure you set them to the right type of batteries. If your device that you're using to power with those batteries has a changeable input, to set it to nickel metal hydride or to alkalines.
And I'm an Inaloop Pro fan too. I like these little yellow cages because they keep the anodes and the other end of that pretty well things, so you can toss this in a bag and make sure that no two batteries get in contact with each other. But to each your own. Next question.
Angelo Jack in Brooklyn, New York asks, what might be a good way to distribute video around a venue across 3 floors? 2 fixed TVs and 1 TV on a mobile stand.
Alex?
It depends. Our favorite answer, it depends. What access do you have? So for these, the first thing that you want to do is try to have a hard line to it. If it's more than 150 feet to get to those other floors, then typically we're going to want to move to fiber. So we're going to use SDI is our first round, just because it has less converters. Typically, we're able to just throw it up there. What you're not going to want to do. So I generally don't run fiber run HDMI more than 12 feet. 12 feet is kind of like my outer edge of production HDMI. I know that they make a bunch of other ones, but when they get cut, they're really hard to replace in a show. I prefer not to go more than 12 feet. So anything over 12 feet on an HDMI cable is going to get converted to baseband, which is a SDI or fiber. Now the other option for you to look at is something like a 2110. But you got to be careful of what switches you're going through. NDI could also work if you have Ethernet. So those are other ways to get there. But the question is what kind of cable do you have to get from one place to the other? And do you have a way to get from one floor to the other? Are you going up the steps? Are you going out a window? These are all things we've done. But these are the things that you want to think about. How do you get to the other floors, and can you get to them via wire? If you can't get to them from a wireless connection, one thing that we have done, if we have internet at those different floors, but we don't have any way to run wires between them, we stream it. So we basically put it on we stream it out to the internet, bring it back in and push it in. And we've used a variety. I mean, everything from YouTube to something that's private to an Akamai to other things that, that will work, but we send it out and back. It depends also on what kind of delay can you handle. But you could theoretically just set up like an SRT transmission and receive and just send it out and back to that thing. It's not what we want to do, but it is something that we have done because the issue that we've had specifically is that we just can't get from one floor to the other. It just depends on how big. Now, also make sure, depending on how big the venue is that you're working with, do they have a patch panel? Do they have their own systems that get from one place to the other? Do they have a network that gets from one place to the other? Now, I wouldn't run it 2110 or NDI on somebody else's network. Like if I don't own the whole network, all the copper, I'm not going to put it on there. But you may be able to find, something that works there. So those are things that I would consider as you go. But you ask the facility, and if they have a really strong network there and it's really well managed, you might be able to find a way for them to carve off what you need as well.
Next question.
Zach Stahlsmith in Chautauqua, New York is asking, I know we have some non-Blackmagic design fans, but does anyone have a good experience with streaming to YouTube with the ATEM Mini Pro ISO?
Alexander Knight.
Not particularly. Blackmagic Design, they have a lot of talented engineers, but the one area where I find is generally weak is the streaming aspect of their products. And it's not just the ATEM minis that have this problem. There's something about the way they've designed the streaming component on a lot of their hardware products, like the web presenters. In fact, actually, I just watched like a multi-hour video where Doug Johnson shows you exactly where it fails. In fact, he did this with a web presenter where he tries to simulate minor network issues. Now, these types of minor network issues typically would not cause any kind of failure in other streaming encoders, but the ATEMs always seem to have this problem where the cache fills up if there's any kind of issue, and they never recover properly. So it's an ongoing battle, and I don't trust them for live streaming. As a switcher, they're fantastic. Streaming, no.
Alex?
Yeah, I definitely have a lot of ATEMs, and I think the interface they have to see what's happening is one of the best. It just looks really nice when you're doing the stream. Unfortunately, I don't think I've had one clean stream from a ATEM device. Like, just there's always been something, dropouts and odd things and other things that didn't work. So I literally haven't had any good experiences with it, and I've tried it a couple times, and we've used it as a secondary stream for a couple things that didn't, where it wasn't mission critical. And there was enough glitches and enough things that we had there that, I think that streaming sometimes, it's not just, I can stream. And we find this with a lot of smaller encoders, is that there's, oftentimes some stability issues. And again, little things that I think that people think, well, that's just streaming. It's not. Like, it doesn't have to. You should be able to stream every single frame of what you're doing, and it should be in a high quality. And so I haven't found it. I haven't been, and I've seen other people who say it's working for them, and then I look at their streams, and what they're seeing and what I'm seeing is different.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael is up next. The Arena One concept uses a single stationary camera. Will the lack of multiple perspectives from multiple cameras be a significant adjustment for audiences compared to how concerts have been filmed and broadcast up to this point?
Courtney?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to be disappointed in the single point of view. Yeah, it gives you the feeling that you're there, but when you're there, even if you can afford the great seats, fifth row center or something, you're going to have your view blocked by somebody or something. Even the performers on the stage are going to block your view. There may be a drum solo and the bass player happens to end up right in front of you in your position, so you miss certain things if you don't have the ability to change your perspective to a different angle where you can see what's going on stage. I don't know if that concept is going to play very well. Depends on the placement of the camera. Hopefully they will place it high enough, elevated above the stage level rather than below the stage level in an audience position, so that you can see all the performers on the stage and they won't be blocked because your camera POV is above the heads of the foreground actors. And I've talked to people that pay big money to go to see live plays, and they get to their seats that they paid a lot of money for, and then find out that somebody placed in the scene, there's a piece of furniture like a chair, wingback chair or something that's placed in a position where the main actors are blocked for 50% of the play by that foreground chair that is only occasionally used. So yeah, a single camera perspective can be problematic, even in live music where the people are moving around on the stage, or stage plays where that would normally be your perspective if you were a live attendee at the play. But you never know until you get there and see the staging and see your seat, whether it's a good seat or a bad seat.
Alex?
I've had a lot of time to think about this. So I think that one thing that you're always thinking about is, are you filming a concert or are you creating a virtual venue? And so I think that the Arena One is really leaning towards more a virtual venue, not filming a concert or streaming a concert. And it's a different thought process. Really, I've thought about this a lot. And what's interesting is that now what I will say is the concept of a single camera does not work on a small screen because it's too wide and you can't, everything's too small and everything else. It only works on a large screen. And to Courtney's point, the camera has to be within a couple feet of the right place, and that is a very specific place that is a little higher than the stage. And as it captures that, the experience that I've had with tests that I've worked on in the past has shown that when it gets to that one position with the right camera angle, you just feel like you're there, and that is and we have to remember that we're also not, I don't think people are going to watch these concerts quietly. The goal is that for them to, and we've talked to people who go to Fandango concerts and everything else. It's less than a stage play or whatever. People go to when they go to concerts, they're singing, they're doing a lot. There's a lot of other things because it's really relying on the audience to kind of engage in that process. So the goal is to have you feel like you are there. But I really, have thought about the process of it, and I find that when I see a concert film, I see a lot of concert films. When I see a concert film, when the camera cuts, I notice myself immediately going into a passive mode. Like I'm just watching. I'm watching, and when the camera doesn't cut over a long period of time, the first 10 minutes, it's kind of like, wow, nothing's cutting, and then at some point you get into a point where you really feel like you're there. And I think that's going to be the case. I think that you do have to design the stage for the camera, and you're not going to be able to just go do this somewhere. And the problem that Courtney pointed out is a play that is really designed for the people that are in the audience, but they're not designing it for that camera. And I think that Arena One is designing the entire event for one camera. And so occlusions and all kinds of other things are things that are being thought of in that area. I think it puts a lot of pressure on the stage that's there to make that actually work. So I think it'll be interesting, and the only way that we'll know if it works or not is to do it. So we're gonna, so I think that, so it'll be interesting to see how that actually works.
Next question.
This one's from Alexander Knight in Port Coquitlam, BC, Canada, and on today's panel. When you have system failures, be it hardware or software or a combination of both, when you're trying to fix things and find workarounds, what is the most diplomatic response to people on your show saying, "So what's the solution?"
Alex?
We are efforting that right now. That's usually how I respond to those things. It unwraps a couple things though that are around this question specifically, and that is one thing that I try to make sure people do when they talk to clients, and I try to minimize the number of people talking to clients because it's easier to control what they say and how they say it and everything else than having the whole crew talk to the client. So one of the things is that we never tell the clients that things are going horribly wrong, and we never tell the clients that things are going amazingly well. So when a client comes to us and says, how's it going? Everything's nominal. Like everything is so far so good. We're cautiously, all of our responses are cautiously optimistic. Or if it's going, if we're having some challenges, we got a couple challenges, but we're working through them. But we stay very close to the middle of what it is. What we don't want to do is necessarily panic the client. But if you tell the client everything is great and everything is going well and things don't go well, they'll never believe you again. And then that means that every event that they do with you they're stressed because they don't believe you. They don't believe anything that you said. And so I think that so we're always very careful to stay in the middle of like, everything's going okay so far, but we're working on a couple things. And I had a client that just said, they asked me that, not when something was going wrong, but like an hour before the event. And he said, I'm pretty clear that I would have no idea whether things are going well or not with you. And I was like, things are moving and we're managing them. There's not any, it's not good or bad. It's just that we're just managing all those bits and pieces. And so, but that's where you want to be you want to keep a poker face about what's going on because it's not too good, not too bad. It's just, you're just kind of going down that path because anything could happen at any time and you want to kind of be ready for that.
Nigel?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. And as a client, you do sometimes want to ask, how are things going? And so I've come to the result that I always ask, are we in a good place? And that I find is a question which allows them to say what they need to say, highlight the things they're not comfortable with. But any more than that, it'll wait and see.
Let's go to our next question.
Next up is Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. What makes these $2,000 Sony MDRZ1R headphones so much more expensive than the Sony WH-1000XM5 $400 headphones?
Courtney.
It's the psychosonic response, which is a phenomenon known as if you pay more for it, you think it sounds a lot better. So it's mostly marketing.
There's something to be said about monster cables here, but I don't know what it is. Next question.
Harshid Trivedi in Daytona Beach, Florida, USA, and on today's panel. Could I get some recommendations on wrapping my Pixel 9 Pro? I could simply buy an OtterBox Defender case, but we've spoken Tilta, and also I'll have my white cane in hand too. Maybe use it at InfoComm or other conventions.
Alex?
So Harshid, you have that's the Pixel 9 there. You're showing it to us, and this is what you want to put it in something. And I think that the question is what do you want to do with the camera? Like if do you want to put mics on it, or do you want to how do you want to manage that?
I have my SSL2 that I could sit in a backpack, so I could pull a wire and get a microphone out that way. But as far as this device, I would use it mainly to capture video. Yep. And having my right hand having a white cane on that hand, so the left hand would probably hold the phone. Yep. Or mount it on my chest or head, something like that.
Yeah, and Chris Sabato said what I took the words out of my mouth. As a general all-purpose case, my favorite by far is the Peak Design case. That little square in the center there will lock into you can get a 1/4-20 mount, and then it's got a little square, and it'll pop in there and lock, and then you have to push a little button to kind of open it back up again. I use it every day. I have one in the car. I have one in so I use a lot of those. Hosmuk got me hooked on these Peak Designs. So if you're looking for an all-around case that's going to protect the camera or protect the phone and have some mounting options that are relatively good, I'd look at Peak Design for doing something operational. Like, so I want to mount a bunch of stuff to the camera. Then you're looking at probably Tilta or Small Rig.
Next question.
Next one comes from Tony Mobley in Noonan. Alex, please share your recent Midjourney experience.
we're going to, we'll push this one back to Tony for the question managers, only because we're at the very end of the show and this will take a longer time to answer. So we'll talk about this tomorrow. Tomorrow's a good, it's kind of our graphics day. So Tony, we'll bring that one forward and we'll make sure that we answer that one. I love the question. Tony asked me the question over the weekend. I was like, you should just ask it in the show. And it just finally got to the top here. And I don't think I can't give it the proper time it deserves. So bring it back in tomorrow and we'll talk about it.
Fair enough. That means we're at the end of things. Thank you all for paying attention to the show today, for being with us. We really appreciate your being here. Again, without you, the producers who ask the questions into the show, we don't have a show. So we very much appreciate the intelligence and the consideration you put into asking these questions and helping everybody learn more about the production arts. Also, to our panelists, thank you so much for coming in and sharing your expertise with us today. And the final group, which we never try to give short shrift to because they are amazing, our back-end crew, all the people all over the world who are helping make this show possible. Thank you to each and every one of you. You'll see some of their names in the credit roll at the end of the show here. Our Talat Traversal today, we've traveled 49,000 miles. That's 79,000 kilometers and is equivalent in our favorite metric to 391 million bananas for scale. We'll see you all tomorrow.
I got to go off and trademark psychosonic response right now.
That was very good.
There's
a band named Psychosonic from the 90s. Really good.
Well, I could trademark it for a product as long as it's not a band.
The way they spelled it was a little bit. It was, I don't know. It's
kind of psycho.
PSY SONIK, I think. Psychosonic.
It's Sisosonic.
Psycho. Maybe I got it. No, maybe it was PSYKO. It was like a lot of K's in it. But anyway, they did they were known for doing the Mortal Kombat theme for the original Mortal Kombat movie. Then they also had hits like Welcome to My Mind and Techno Jihad, which is
I always wanted to have a popular name, Brainsaw.
Brainsaw. Ow. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Well done.